Could you imagine having a friendship with an AI? How about asking one to teach your kids at school? How about even having a real ongoing romantic relationship with an AI chatbot? Well, we explore all of these questions and more on this week's episode of The Complete Tech Heads with me, Tommy Edwards, as I interview a real expert in neuroscientist and psychologist, Dr Pauldy Otermans.
Complete Tech Heads.
Hello friends, I am here with psychologist, neuroscientist and AI founder, Dr Pauldy Otermans, for what I am sure will be a super insightful conversation about all things to do with AI, teaching, psychology, and lots of other good stuff, I'm sure. So, Dr. Pauldy, thanks so much for joining me. So it would be great if I could get a brief intro to you, your background, and kind of how you came to the position you're at in life currently.
Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you, Tom. So hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Pauldy Otermans, as Tom already mentioned. I'm a female tech leader in the UK. I'm a neuroscientist and psychologist sort of by academic background. I did a PhD in cognitive neuroscience. But I'm also the co-founder of Otermans Institute, which built the first independent AI teacher, which we call OIAI, with the mission to upskill 750 million underserved students globally by 2030. And as part of that role, or as part of OIAI, I oversee the research that really drives our product development. So that's in a nutshell who I am.
Awesome. Okay, well, look, I would love to start by learning a bit more about the problem that you're trying to solve with OIAI. So what is the issue that you've decided to take on?
Yes, so for us, the problem really is that there are not enough teachers in the world. And if you today wanted to teach someone to learn something, and if you wanted someone to teach you that, you don't really have easy access to that. It's not really accessible or just not available to you, maybe in your area. So we really wanted to solve that problem, and with that also the global skills and knowledge gap that exists.
Okay, and so why is that then? Is it simply that not enough people are training to be teachers? There isn't there just aren't enough people generally, or enough qualified people? Like, what are the kind of reasons for that, do you think?
I think it's multifold, that there is sort of simply not enough teachers for the amount of people that need to be taught.
Yeah.
So that's a number, just a number game. However, what is also really tricky when it comes to education and teaching is that the quality of teaching, monitoring that and providing, let's say an excellent level of quality assurance is really tricky. So if I give you an example there, when we started with Otermans Institute, or OI as we call ourselves, sometimes it's easier, in February 2020, our idea was to teach young people, underserved people, unserved people, people that may not have access, employability skills. Because we found really almost like a gap in the market there, where a lot of people have finished a degree, whether that's secondary school, high school, or even university's degrees, and then still are not able to get a job. Why? Why is that? Unemployment rates in a lot of countries are very high. We're like, why do these people are not able to get a job? So when we went, actually, we did a big piece of work. We traveled to Southeast Asia. We taught a lot of students. We talked to teachers. We talked to people in the education sector. And just when we were about to actually start with our program, COVID-19 hit. And of course, everything had to be digitized. In the end, I must say, I think this was actually a really good point for us as an organization. We pivoted very rapidly to delivering all our training digitally via Zoom. We found that the easiest platform. But we were then scaling very rapidly because you didn't have to travel anymore. There was no commuting. There was no, all these things that come with logistics when you do something in person, they were no longer there. So we scaled rapidly, quickly moved to about 11 countries in the span of a few months, and then got a lot of support, lots of new trainers onboarded. We had to train the trainers, and then overseeing all of that is very difficult. So even if you have an X number of trainers within your institution, in your school, in your environment, in your community, then still maintaining that quality is really tricky because not everyone teaches the same. If you would teach today and I would teach, we would teach the same person, they would get a very different experience because everybody brings in their own experiences, their backgrounds, their knowledge, their examples. But the way you talk, the way I talk, everything is different. So that quality control is really difficult. And when we realized that, because that only came when we were expanding, we said, well, this is not going to be a solution. We cannot keep getting more trainers and train them. This is growing so quickly that this is not manageable. So then we thought, well, can we use technology to our advantage and see can we use AI to help us build this solution and solve this problem, or get at least closer to solving that problem and bridging that gap.
Great. Okay. Well, so you've touched on your solution there. So we've got this big gap in teacher numbers. You've started doing it on Zoom. So what have you done then with AI to scale that program?
Yeah, so we really think that AI can help in this, and we think, to put it in a slightly different manner, we think AI in essence can put this, productivity sort of on steroids. And what I mean by that is that it can allow anyone to get personalized attention 24/7. So it may not yet be as good as a dedicated human being. Yes, okay. But we're just at the beginning, right? At this curve, this technology curve is, it's growing so rapidly. And improvements in AI and the technology, both, at the back end, but also the way we experience it and the user interfaces, everything will follow really, really fast. And I think everybody in the sphere of AI who either works with them or uses the different tools that are out there, we're all excited about, GPT-3, GPT-4, but Sam Altman is already talking about GPT-9 on screen. So you can see, where this technology curve is only going to. So today we can get personalized attention from something that has more data in it itself, in its brain, than any single solution in history. So that's why we think the impact of AI can be really, really beneficial here for students, for learners, as we tend to call them. And yes, there may be good and bad uses of AI. I think there's been lots of the news about that as well. But there's good and bad uses if you're thinking about the bad sides of other scientific developments as well. If you think about nuclear technology, that has its good and bad uses. But when I think if we use AI correctly and for the right reasons, so if I think about what we're trying to do to eradicate this global skills gap and the global knowledge gap, I think it's very promising, and there is it's a bright future ahead of us.
Yeah. So I can imagine how it might be useful for, students with maybe don't have enough teach time to be chatting to ChatGPT, but that's not quite what you're doing, is it? Like what exactly is it that you've developed?
Yes, well, it's indeed, as you said, quite different than just having a chat, as you said, with ChatGPT, for instance, or any of the other platforms. But to begin with, or sort of to answer your question, you can try it out yourself, or to anybody that's listening, feel free to try it out on some of our models on oiedu.co.uk. You can explore our products there, like our digital human teacher. Sorry?
I'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, yes, that would be lovely. Yeah, you can explore our products like our digital human teacher. And you can also
digital human teacher. Yeah. What is a digital human teacher?
Yeah, I was just about to go on to that. So our teachers are not bots. They're not chatbots. So they're meant to look human-like. So one of our North Stars in the company is to be human-like.
Okay.
And what we mean by that is, because our North Star is human-like, we even had to develop our own synthetic avatars. So even that dialogue flow, so they don't just look human-like, because that's one thing, they also interact with you in a human-like way. That dialogue is flowing as a conversation as you and I are having now, but it also asks you questions. So if you think about a chatbot is very, let's say passive, right? You ask it questions and it fires answers back at you. Yeah. Right? It tries to answer your questions in the best way possible, and you can judge yourself whether you are happy with that answer or not. But with us, it's the teacher or the digital human teacher that also asks you questions. So it also makes small talk. So we have that for both our digital teacher, but also we have another product called Teddy AI that is a human-like teacher, but then made for children in the form of a teddy bear, because it is for children after all, right? What do they not like more than a teddy bear? Sure. But again, Teddy's conversational nature is human-like. So he will talk to the children. He also has more of a childish voice than an adult voice. And again, he engages with the children through the app. You can look it up on the Google Play Store at the moment. It's there as an early release. And you can download and, play. You can learn things, but you can talk to Teddy. He will ask you questions. You can ask him questions. So it's really that conversation. That's what we think is the key difference comparing to what you mentioned before, like a bot.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and so you've got an avatar, you've animated it, so you've got presumably you've spent some time on motion design, animating how these teachers, I don't know, gesture and have human-like movements, I suppose. What is sitting underneath that? So is it built on an API that we'll all have heard of, or have you developed your own LLM? What's the technology underneath?
Yeah, so we have built our own supervised models with our own data since we've built our very first MVP that we used to teach learners in Northern Iraq in 2021.
Okay. Oh wow! So you've been at this for a while then.
Yeah. It's we were there quite early on.
Yeah.
Of course, lots of stuff has happened since then. Developing on all aspects, not just the LLM, but also the front facing, the interactions, the usability, and we developed that then further using our own generative AI techniques. And we are currently, or we keep, this is a continuous thing. It will probably never stop. We for a lot of our new testing models that we're doing, where we test our hypotheses, because as I mentioned at the beginning, I drive sort of the research, and together with sort of the AI architect lead and the entire team, everybody does a lot of research before we do something. So all of our work, whether that is looking at what is there at the back, how are we developing this large language model, to how are we conducting a study to find out what the users want. Everything is very much research driven. Sometimes when we're testing these new models, we may use APIs from existing systems like Llama, GPT, Falcon. Yeah. But for most of the production level, so when you would be interacting, we'll be using our own trained language models. So yeah.
Okay. Wow. Exciting. So what data are you training on?
Lots of different data.
Yeah. So have you, because OpenAI obviously scraped the public internet, right? I know obviously the big tech firms have got vast reams of their own proprietary data that they're using. Are you a mix of those two things? Because I assume you would need school curriculum data and stuff like that as well, right?
Yeah, so we need a bit of a mix, but we do have our own curriculum. So when we started teaching with humans at the beginning, when AI wasn't there yet, so to speak, or was in its really early stages, we have built our own entire curriculum from scratch. That was at that time very much focused on the soft skills and employability skills, professional skills development. So we have that entire curriculum from ourselves, which was the foundation that we started with. So we've just now, further built on that, and keep testing it and keep training it and see where the flaws are as well. But it's a bit of a mix.
Okay, and so in that process, then, has it surprised you in any way? Has there been any moments where you've been like, "Oh wow, fuck, this is amazing"? It's like it wakes up. Have you had a kind of eureka moment when you've been working through this?
I think if you'd ask that to any of our team members, everybody would say yes and give you a different example, I think. Okay. For me, it would be, so when we tested our first MVP in Northern Iraq in 2021, the learners would engage with our, very early stage digital human teacher. And they would interact with her. Well, we were all on Zoom, but we told them, okay, turn your microphone and camera off and go and play or interact with the teacher. And then, after, 10 to 15 minutes, they would come back to the Zoom. And we then discuss with them how they found it, their thoughts, their feelings, just to see, what is their initial reaction on this. Because we didn't really know what to expect, to be honest, because you throw something out there and obviously internally you test it. But, when you're working on something yourself, you most likely think, you think it's a great thing. Otherwise, you would not be investing the time and resources in it. And we did some research level stuff there too. We used some validated skills and questions from the literature. And they give us some great results. But one of the things one of the learners said was like, wow, she speaks to me. And for me, that was just the moment like, okay, yeah, it clicks. It's going to work. So
we're onto something.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, interesting. So does the system learn from its interactions with the students? Or is it like, because, ChatGPT doesn't really learn from the conversations that I have with it day to day, right? The model's already trained. Is yours similar, or is it learning all the time?
It's different. So it's absolutely learns from the interactions with the learners, because one of our key areas is really to give learners that personalized teacher in your pocket, right, on that smartphone that everybody now has. Yeah. So you really want to get that personalized attention when you're learning. So yes, we still give everybody the same AI teacher. So hence sort of, the same quality of the resource and the content and the topic. So we're all learning that same topic. But as you keep interacting with the AI, it personalizes the teaching to suit your needs, which may be different than my needs. And that's not necessarily a new technology, because if you would go shopping on, I don't know, one of the platforms, let's say Amazon, it keeps giving you recommendations based on your previous habits. So it's a similar thing. So that's sort of the foundation of what our AI does too. So
it just gets better and better and better at teaching you things. God,
yes.
So it's like, wow. So it could be, I mean, I'm getting a bit out there, but it could raise like superhumans, right? Like if you've just got this teacher that's just iterating and getting, and it's optimizing for teaching you personally stuff, it's going to get better and better at understanding what resonates and what doesn't. Like, I mean, that's, well, obviously you think it's exciting. That's why would you be doing this? But I mean, that is very cool. I think that's very cool. I like, are you slightly worried that students might work with your AI teacher and then when they go back to a normal human, like be kind of underwhelmed or disappointed by that human interaction?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I haven't looked at it necessarily in that way. At the moment, we would not say that our teacher replaces the teacher in the classroom.
Right. Yeah.
You go to school or
it's an
university.
aid, it's a tool.
Exactly. We see it now as you go to school, you learn with your peers as well. Remember, there's, not just the teacher, there's the other interactions one has in a classroom setting, those social interactions as well with other, human beings. But then when you go home and let's say, you have some homework to do, you have a test to study tomorrow and you don't really understand something, most likely your teacher is not available to, call you at 9 p.m. at night and be like, hey, miss, I don't understand this, that, or the other. Yeah. So you could continue your learning journey. And then later on, you want to learn something completely different. That is nothing related to what you learn at school or at work maybe as well, or at university, wherever you are. You pick up you pick up, your phone and you continue your learning journey. Whatever it is that you might want to learn. And
I guess there is... well, in fact, this is probably a good question for you as a neuroscientist and psychologist. There will be differences in the ways that we interact and respond to a human-like digital avatar versus real-life human interaction, right? Like you're not ever going to entirely replicate that, I don't suppose.
Yeah, and that's where things like emotions also come into play, of course. And at the moment, I don't think, or at least not for us, and I haven't seen anywhere that I know of, doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I haven't seen it yet, that these sort of digital human teachers also embrace and showcase empathy and compassion like we humans do when you interact. And we have loads of facial expressions, body movements. We are still very far, I think, to really replicate that, so to speak, in a digital human teacher. You really then have to talk about AGI, artificial general intelligence, and we're not near that yet. Well, not in the public domain. As I said, I don't know what's further on out there. But you can use techniques like modeling, to make it more human-like. Empathy is, I think, one of the biggest factors that we need to look at there. But again, the tone that one uses, when you're having a conversation with the AI, the tone that's being used. Sometimes, even the choice of words which has nothing to do with, let's say, your facial expression, but the choice of words that you use can have a big impact on how the person is receiving it.
Yeah.
The fact that it's friendly, it maybe, it just greets you. Hey, how are you doing today? Did you have a good weekend? That is already, it's not empathy yet, but it's already going closer to building a connection with you as a human being, which for us, we hope that, research in education also suggests that, when you have a better connection between the instructor, the teacher, and the learner, that only helps that engagement, that boosts that interactivity, and most likely the learner will then pick things up better, better for memory, better for knowledge building, knowledge application. So that connection is definitely really important. And at the moment, that's obviously something that's being worked on.
Yeah. So like how much time are you spending on that, like interaction style, I guess, and like kind of empathy replication versus like the content and the curriculum and like the stuff that's underlying it? Like, what's the sort of split of your time and energy, I guess, between those things?
Difficult. Don't really box my time as much. I would say, because also different people get involved in these aspects, right? The different things. So I think it has sort of its ups and downs. I think probably a bit 50-50, or maybe 60 content at the moment, 40 the whole empathy thing. But I think it's more like 50-50. And once you have, let's say, cracked the content is working well. It's a matter of updating that regularly so that your curriculum does stay up to date, because AI can do that. And maybe sometimes you have to retrain the model if you have lots of new data that you think can be very useful to improve it. But then the rest is really spent on researching on how to make it more human-like, how to drive these conversations, having that chit-chat, having, the way one asks a question can also be having an impact. So not just necessarily the content of the question, what it is that you're asking, but how. And then all these things like gestures, facial expressions, that is a huge piece of work. That is also a lot that has to go at the back as well. So yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah, I bet. And I guess probably you won't be the only people working on that either. Like, there's probably other companies that are just doing that, I guess. Like, are you tempted to kind of third party the motion design, or is it all, you want to keep it all in house and make it just yours?
So at the moment everything is in house. As said, sometimes here and there we may use an API to test certain things. We prefer to keep it in house if possible, so we'll see how we further develop that and where we are with it. Can obviously learn a lot from what the companies do to see how they're doing it, how they're showcasing it. And we do a lot of testing. As I mentioned, everything is very much research driven. So in one of the tests we do with our AI teacher, we concluded that, is we used a particular scale which consists of a few questions that we asked the learners afterwards, which measured sort of how, well, the term they use is warm. How sort of warm the AI teacher is, how trustworthy is, another set of questions where every person just rates the questions and then we calculate a particular score out of it. I won't go into the details of that, but it showed that the users found the AI teacher, they use the word human-like, but warm, trustworthy, open, friendly. Right. So there is a lot of things, and that's, it's not just sometimes only the AI. There are also other aspects like the background. So you have the AI teacher. What is the background? How does that look like? That can also impact their experience. So there are so many studies, small studies, one can do to just understand how to turn this much more into a, well, let's say real life setting. So that's definitely something that we're doing a lot of work on.
Yeah. So I guess kind of what we're really circling around is it's anthropomorphism, right? Like how close are we going to get to people really, for all intents and purposes, viewing these agents? And I don't just mean yours either. Like, obviously, as you'll know, there's lots of other agents doing different things out there. How close are we getting to people really understanding them as a relationship on a par with their other human relationships? All right. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think this is something that we'll have to see. But I also think that people already have a lot of relationships with non-human objects. As in people are attached to toys.
Yeah,
People
sure,
attached to,
yeah.
I don't know, statues, all things. I
Cars.
think everybody has a box somewhere in a cupboard, that you're just never going to throw away because you're very
true.
attached to it. But there's just materials, as in, I don't know what you have. Everybody has different things.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
people are attached to, non-human related things. So, and they also attach to characters. How many children are not attached to a particular character? And even now, when you're older, you probably had a favorite character or, a favorite character from a movie even. People can become very attached to these things.
Yeah.
So I think being attached to a conversational AI is probably not going to be a surprise. Because they seem to be even more alive, than those characters or those non-human objects.
Yeah.
Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I actually, to be honest, I don't know. It's a tricky playground, I think, and maybe it's even for us as a society to see where do we really draw that line. Where is that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I've got quite strong views that that AI relationships, so AI girlfriends, for example, there's a sort of rise in that. For me, that feels like the line. Like that feels like a bad thing for society. Like the idea that you can potentially have these romantic relationships at scale, that feels like the sort of thing that can really undermine the foundations of a society, right? And they're getting increasingly good. I think what you're doing is it's great. You're solving a problem, and it's a very different thing. And I think there are lots of really amazing applications for these kinds of things. And even friendship, I guess. There are lots of lonely people. Having a friend might be a really useful thing for lots of lonely people out there.
I was just gonna. Sorry, I had to interrupt. I was just gonna add to that. If the AI, the lonely people or people with certain related mental health problems, to give them personalized support by having a friend there, having a buddy who you can talk to. That would definitely be good. These people shouldn't, suffer in silence or suffer alone.
Yeah.
Definitely being able to talk to someone, obviously reliably. The answers need to be, the content there needs to be really spot on. But that is a good thing, right? And then if someone gets, let's say, attached to that AI, I think that's a good thing. However, as you mentioned before, if that then results into a, digital romantic relationships at the cost of actually connecting with other human beings around you, I probably also would say that that's a bad thing. Although maybe now it's still too early to say where we really are. But there have been other companies out there. I don't know if you've heard, you probably have, the Replica.
Yeah,
the other
I was
company,
going to ask you about them. Yeah.
They had to, temporarily remove their, this adult speaking content because but then many users became sad as they were really, getting a strong connection to these, or almost like pseudo romantic relationships with these AI characters. And now I recently saw that they are trying to create almost like a side, I don't know if they were going to call it a side business, to go more into those that almost want, a romantic or erotic relationship with an AI avatar. That's an area that I think is a bit dangerous maybe to go into, because that's probably not what AI should be used for. If I think relating it back to our example, our teachers are tools. They are help people learn. That's why they are tools at the moment. Yeah. But by teaching, and that's what we found, by teaching through these human beings, as I mentioned at the beginning, when we rapidly had to expand because of COVID, what we found is the empathy and connection of the learner and the teacher. That relationship, that connection that built up because there was, the curriculum is maybe 9, 13, 17 lessons, not a one-off thing. That really played the biggest role in the enthusiasm of the learners. They're looking forward to coming again, let's say next week, retention of knowledge, applying that knowledge then to a new scenario. And I think that's why we really want our AI to be as human-like as possible, because we really see that it can help engage them. They even ask, deeper questions, so we can see, they actually, they're really learning, they're really understanding what it is that that we are trying to get across, or the teachers are trying to get across. And also there's a little bit of, accountability. So, you are accountable to learn. and you probably put your best, foot forward, and you want to do your best when you actually like that other person that is teaching you. So that's why we think it's so important to have our AI as a human likeness as our North Star, as I mentioned. But I'm not saying relationships, but a personal connect to your digital human teacher is probably a good thing and a very possible. Relationship is a totally different game.
Well, I think the difference for me is like we were saying before, what your tool, your product is doing is optimizing. The thing that you're optimizing for is quality of teaching, personalization. The thing you're optimizing for is how much of the student's learning, and the kind of the intermediary goal there is, are they enjoying learning? Are they, enjoying interacting with their teacher? Are they, enthusiastic about coming to the next lesson? Like an AI girlfriend, to just stay on that subject for a minute, what's that optimizing for? It's optimizing to addict you, right? Like it's optimizing for hitting that dopamine reward pathway over. You'll know more about that than I will as a neuroscientist. I suspect that's what it's optimizing for, right? To keep you coming back, like social media does with notifications, but just on on turbo,
Exactly. As you said, social media, it's the same thing. The very fact that you keep scrolling, and they did a lot of research into, the way people scroll on social media, for example. This is obviously bad. It keeps you getting addicted. People do this the whole day, right? They're on the phone and just go like this. And obviously that is a very negative side of AI, because that's what it's doing, is optimizing, based on your behavior, what you may see, what will be shown to you. And so you keep scrolling because you want to know more. But, if you are getting good search results, for example, or, to increase your efficiency, to become more productive, that's obviously a good outcome, and that's also because of AI. So yeah, totally.
I think the way it appears to me is like it just demonstrates the potential power of AI for good and for ill, right? Which is why it's part of the reason why I sort of set up this podcast, is to kind of try and talk about this and try and understand it. But it seems to me like, just in those two examples that we've just been discussing, you've got a quite a clear demonstration of potential for allowing all of these kids who don't have teachers to have a really awesome teacher and to learn loads and to pursue their goals in life to a much more successful degree, right? For me, that seems like an unalloyed good. It's just going to iterate over helping them learn better. Then on the other side, quite similar technology in terms of building empathy, in terms of like a human-like avatar who's engaging with you, but a much more terrifying outcome as far as I'm concerned, because it would just could potentially take loads of people off the mainframe and just like make them terrified of real life relationships, and I think that's quite a worry. So yeah, that's
no, I totally agree with you, and I think that there is also probably an awareness piece to be done, an educational piece in terms of, I'm not saying the good and bads of AI. I wouldn't want to call it like that, but to what extent, when one interacts with an AI, a totally different example. If I think about one of our products, the TED AI, the AI study buddy, conversational AI for children, what we have also implemented recently, and we're still doing ongoing research on it, but people can start testing it already, is if your child is playing with Teddy, you actually don't really know what's going on. As a parent, you might think, what do I do? However, you can track the progress. You can see what the child is doing. And not just that, because that's great, that's just monitoring. But you, as the parent of the child, can, using your parent dashboard, website, link, that the kid doesn't have access to, you can influence what the AI will talk to your kid about. So let's say your child is not doing so well in school about, I don't know, geography. I'm just making something up here. You could tell Teddy, hi Teddy, next time you speak to, whatever your name if your child is John, next time you speak to John, could you please, focus on the capitals of Europe, because he's not so good at that. And Teddy be like, all right. So when John comes to the app next time, maybe chit-chatting, Teddy will slowly put that in, or direct John to a particular game that he may be wanting to interact with to learn that. And that, again, I think is a positive way of using AI, but also making the other person aware of what is being done. Now, when it
Yeah.
comes to the relationship, that's obviously much more tricky because it's just one person at a time. But even there could be educational pieces of what does this mean, or questions to the users and asking, if they still also have touch with actual humans.
Yeah.
Because the metaverse is there, right? I mean, it's coming. It's increasingly sort of expanding in different dimensions. And for a lot of people, I mean, we live in a digital world. I think we can all agree upon that. I mean, that what we're doing now, we're doing
Right.
this
Yeah.
digitally.
I was just going to say. Yeah.
We're
I
not
know,
sitting
yeah.
somewhere and recording and getting rid of all the background noises that keep passing us. No, but our digital life is very much here and now. And I think if we're thinking, well, trying to think ahead a few years, it's going to be difficult to imagine doing anything without digital. For us, maybe for some of us, it may still be sort of easy to remember those times. But for the people that are growing up now, digital is everything. It's
Yeah.
there, and everything that they do, from the moment they wake up till the moment they go to sleep, everything is digital. And they will do everything digitally, right? Shopping, paying there, going there, everything is digital. They don't have to drive their car themselves anymore. So.
Yeah.
And then they will also explore this entire other world on the metaverse, which is only increasing exponentially. And that too will have a big role.
Yeah. So are you? So the metaverse, I guess I was interested in it, and I feel like it's kind of waned a bit. Like that we're sort of not living as much in the metaverse anymore. But are you quite an advocate of it then? And could you see your technology being applied into a virtual classroom where people where you have that peer interaction and the teacher interaction in on top of Mount Everest, or on board the Titanic or something?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
This needs a lot of research, I think, to find out to what extent do people want this. And maybe people don't know yet what they want, because for a lot of people, the metaverse is some unknown word. But this will soon, people will start exploring. Recently, I attended a conference, and it was an online conference. But they also had, the virtual room there. So when there was a lunch break, instead of, I don't know, going to the shop here and buying myself a lunch and sitting in front of my desk, I still did that. But then I could join the virtual space and interact with other people in the conference, which was great, because how else would I network at this conference if there was no, this virtual... It was a bit weird, I must say. But
Yeah.
it helped building those connections and network, because normally you would, grab your lunch and sit with the people that are before and behind you in the queue, and you would start a conversation.
Yeah.
There, I think, again, there could be good outcomes for something like the metaverse. But if you look at the gaming industry, digital gaming and online digital gaming with other people has been there for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
So I don't think in that way, yes, the metaverse is new, but it's not, I guess, I should say maybe that new. And I think there is a lot of exploring that still needs to happen to see what this will lead to and how are we going to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the difference with gaming is that it's a really fun environment, right? Like most metaverse, test cases that you see, they're like, a room, Mark Zuckerberg with no legs in a room looking at, like the window or whatever. It's like, who wants to do that? Who wants to spend their time, sitting in a room? Like if you want to, yeah, I don't know. I think the gaming example is a good one, because it's like you need something to bring people in. So and your conference example, the reason you're there is not to exist in a virtual space, is because you're at a conference, right? You're there to learn about stuff, and then there's this byproduct of virtual rooms that are kind of making those connections that you might otherwise get in the real world. But yeah, okay. Well, there was one other thing that I wanted to ask you, which is sort of a bit more waxing philosophical, I suppose. And it's about the way, given that you are a neuroscientist and you're in the AI field, I'd love to know if you have any thoughts on the differences between the ways humans learn and the ways machines learn. And is there any similarity at all, or is it like birds and planes, right? Like we just invented a much more energy intensive way of flying. Like, do you have any kind of thoughts on those different learning styles?
Good question. Interesting question.
Yeah, and I will apologise to you. Our listeners don't know, but I didn't give you any heads up about this question either
No, and that's
before
fine.
before we spoke. But I just thought of it while we were talking. So yeah,
That's
if you've
totally
got
fine.
any thoughts, it just feels like an interesting question to me. Like, how have we developed this thing? How different is it from our own brains? Are we modelling our own kind of learning?
It's an interesting question because when we talk about in our own organization about our OIAI, so our artificial intelligence, our digital human teachers, we call it the brain. So we have our OIAI, which is our brain, which then obviously has its large language models, keeps on training, and that feeds then into, let's say, our digital human teacher and our TED AI, at the moment. But the way that brain, I guess, has been created or has been developing and been trained and tested, I would say it's quite different from the way humans grow up, humans develop.
Yeah.
Also, the time is already a big difference. An AI brain can learn a lot of things very quickly, whilst we as humans often take quite a long time to get to know something, to learn something, and then later on, if we're coming to a similar scenario, remember we had learned that to apply, let's say the right thing and not make that mistake, let's say again. Whilst a lot of us, we do make mistakes over and over until we finally learn that. AI can learn things much faster and a lot more as well in a short period of time. Now, it doesn't obviously have that satisfaction feeling that humans have. If we learn something or if something we learned or goes well, we are maybe over the moon, we're excited, and that maybe drives us and motivates us. These feelings, apart from what we discussed earlier, this empathy, the feelings, the motivation, AI obviously doesn't have either. And our learning, I think, finally is also shaped by the way we interact with others around us, our own background, our experiences, and how we, our own individual beliefs. Now, I probably would say the AI doesn't have any beliefs, although you can train it to have certain beliefs, I guess, and certain visions and values. But that is still then the same for that entire AI. Whilst if we pick a topic today, it doesn't have a favorite things. You and I have favorite things. If I ask you what's your favorite cake, you may say chocolate. I'm like, oh, I hate chocolate. Rather have banana cake. Or if you ask an AI, oh, I don't have any. They don't have any things like that. And that all is part of our learning. It's a very silly example, but that very much influences the way you learn and the way you pick up information. And
Really?
you can decide as a human that you only will learn about this, this, and that. And if I give you a book, you may just skip half of it because you're not interested. Or you're reading, but actually you're not really reading. You're skipping half of the lines because you can't wait to go to, I don't know, page 20 because there's an image and you really love to learn in that way. An AI doesn't have that, personal preference over I want to learn this, I don't want to learn that. So I think there's a lot of differences in the way we pick up information compared to how technology does it.
I guess it's probably because the human brain is optimized for efficiency, right? Like
Yes.
we don't have endless energy and endless compute to throw at a problem. We don't have a whole data center inside there. We've got a small thing that needs to be super efficient. So I mean, and tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but I suppose part of that choosing what to learn is like an evolved behavior to maximize efficiency, right? Like we learn the things that we're interested in and we have beliefs about things. It forms our interpretation of the world. And we've kind of evolved not to waste time learning things that aren't relevant to the things we're going to need, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. And we may also just say, okay, enough. I've learned, I don't know the solution. I'm going to go with the best way possible. And I'm just going to see how that turns out. And if it then turns out wrong, okay, we know now that this is wrong. We learn something from it. Well, it's not a mistake, but we learn something from it and applying that in the next scenario. Again, it's different with an AI. It would really optimize and maybe come up with something that we couldn't come up with because we are maybe thinking in a particular box or thinking from a particular perspective.
Yeah.
So yes, there is a lot when it comes to learning that is different. Also, humans all learn in a different way and in a different pace. And and learn at particular times. Some people are, morning, evening, afternoon people.
Really?
That's
I didn't know
one
that.
thing. Yeah,
Okay.
some people, function and optimize better by being more attentive and being more focused and being able to concentrate, which also helps with motivation. So
Right.
if you are, you can be very motivated to do something, but if you don't have enough concentration and focus for it, you can be as motivated as you want, but it's not going to lead to the output you desire.
Yeah.
As well as, I may be a visual learner, but you may be, you don't like to learn from images. You want to just read text and text and text. You rather want a textbook and you just read. Well, I'll be like, I actually would like to listen to a video. Maybe the video is 45 minutes. It doesn't matter. But in that way, I learn more. Some people want both. So again, there is learning for a human is very individualized, because everybody picks up the information in their own way based on the way they've been brought up, the environment they're in, and based on the way they learn. And that is obviously the tricky part with AI, to mimic, to see that you can still give that personalized one-to-one support to each individual learner. And that's why, the more interactions you have with the AI, the better, the more it learns about you and your behavior and what you like and not like, and focuses obviously on the things you like to then enhance your learning journey.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I find this, like, I can have real desire to do something, but if I think I'm quite sort of industrious, like, I spend a lot of time working, but if I don't find something interesting, like if I find something boring, I find it so incredibly difficult to get through. Like, and I will think of, I'll procrastinate. I'll think of anything else that's even marginally more interesting to go and find to do than the thing that I find boring. Whereas if I'm interested, if it, like this, right, talking about AI with experts and interesting people, I'll do it all day, and I'll remain completely focused in this conversation. I'm not distracted at all. So it really resonates, everything you're saying about that personal preference, that individualization, and I guess large language models are the polar opposite of that, right? Like, they just have everything, give everything equal focus, and have a very, very generalized view. And actually, that's often a criticism of the output that you get from things like ChatGPT, which I guess is less so the case with your platform because it iterates and personalizes. But ChatGPT is very generic. You get very generic responses to questions.
True.
And I guess what you're doing is kind of a best of both worlds a little bit, right? Like, you're finding what people are interested in and then focusing on that way to teach them about it.
Yeah, so as you said, ChatGPT is a that's, a large language model.
Yeah.
We are looking at having a large language model, particularly for the field of education. So ours is not a general model. It's very focused on this particular, still very big field, education. But a lot of parts would not be relevant for our model because we're not looking at that generic. Yes, there is a bit of generic in there, obviously, because you need to have the chit chat, right? The conversation that you have as a user. And that obviously has a database of a lot of generic knowledge in there. And people also may want to learn about different things. So there is general knowledge in there, but it specializes in education, the way you interact, the way you quiz, the way you ask questions. There's a lot more in there and that way, than if you're thinking about something like ChatGPT, as you said.
Awesome. Well, look, we are running up towards the end of our time together. It's been super interesting. So let's just wrap up by just letting people know where the best places to keep up with you are, what you've got coming up next, like anything that you'd like to sign off with.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely lovely to be on your show. Thank you so much for the invite. I could talk to you probably the rest of the day, but
same. I wish I had. I wish I'd had longer. I honestly would go on for much longer.
But that might turn into a very, very long episode. But happy to talk on another time as well. I think if you're interested to hear more about what we discussed today, feel free to go to our website oiedu.co.uk. You can explore, as I mentioned, our digital human teacher. You can sign up as well there, or if you have an Android, you can play with TED.AI on the Google Play Store, or you can go to tedai.com and interact with him on the web. And always happy to answer any questions. You'll find our social media hashtags and our email address there too. So just reach out and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Awesome. All right. Well, I will make sure to get a list of those links and stuff from you and put them in the show notes. But yeah, look, for now, I'm sure I would love to get you on again in future. So I'm sure we'll make something happen when you've got the next news event or whatever. But yeah, for now, thanks very much for joining me.
Lovely. Thank you so much.